If I was to meet up with you down at the range or up there at the field gate to go hunting, and I simply ask the question to you, well, what pellets are you using tonight? No doubt you'd fire it straight out the particular brand and maybe the individual pellet size that you found is the most consistent and accurate in your air rifle. But not only that, if I went on to say, oh, is there anything else you use, you'd be able to list maybe 2, 3 or 4 other pellets that you found are very consistent and accurate in your rifle, and you'd be able to put those in order of best to worst. Now, when it comes to putting a regulator into your air rifle, although that should help with shot consistency and accuracy, there's a good chance that you might find that this particular order of pellets changes, and so it's wrong to assume from the start that the pellet that's performing the best, the most consistent and accurate at the moment is going to remain being the most consistent and accurate after the regulator has been fitted. Now, there's a reason for this, and we'll look at that in a minute. But to start with, we're going to do a little look at a case study from an incident that happened to me towards the end of last year. Now, the particular gun we're going to talk about in this case study, you may have seen a fleeting glance of on the launch of the Air Rifle Reviews competition to win the 2 regulators that they were giving away, that were given to them. Now, in that first video announcing the competition, you might recall that I stood at the back of a lathe holding a Air Arms S200 Mark 1, which was in 177, and one or two of you commented on the huge custom silencer that was mounted on the front of it. Now, my friend Ian had owned that gun for quite a number of years, and he's already had some tuning work done at it, all polished inside, had the trigger altered. I think he's got an adjustable stock plate and foot underneath the back, etc. But he thought it was time that he had one of my regulators fitted in, and he's been a good friend for about 20 years now. So he came to stay for the week to go shooting and to have this work carried out. Now, he's been very happy with his S200, which is why he's had it for quite a number of years since the first came out, and he was looking forward to having the regulator fitted. Now, when the gun first arrived, we shot it, we did a graph, and we did a bit of a group. Now, the group will just sort of do a simulated drawing, say at 50 yards, the 177 pellet group was something, say it was something like that. Now, went away, machined out the cylinder end caps, fitted the regulator in, adjusted the outlet valve spring compression, all the various things that's shown on the video that's on the YouTube fitting instructions channel, and got it all set up. So it was shooting extremely consistently over the chronoscope, and then we went outside to try it on the range. And the group we got after the regulator was fitted would have probably been slightly better for someone shooting skeet or English sporting clays, because the pellets were truly all over the place. Now, these were the same pellets, and the gun had seemed to be shooting very consistently over the chronoscope. So at this, you can imagine that my good friend Ian was absolutely horrified. He was even more horrified by the fact that I wasn't worried about it whatsoever, because it's something that I'd come across before, and I was sure that there was nothing to worry about and it was easily going to be sorted. And so what we did was, you've got to eliminate what could possibly be the problem. And so we'll just use this rifle as an example. What could be causing the pellets to spread out all over the place? Well, it could be a number of things, because the gun had got a silencer on it. So you take the silencer off, and that eliminates the fact that the pellets are either coming close to the edge of the silencer or actually clipping a baffle or two. We took the scope off, we took the magazine unit off of his S200, and then what we did was we came back in the workshop, cocked and individually carefully loaded each pellet into the rifle and fired it over the chronoscope. Now, at this point, that we found that every single shot was very, very consistent. Fired 20 or 30 shots, and there was just a couple of feet per second within each one. So that instantly points to the fact that it's not the regulator causing the problem, because every shot is, you know, nice and sweet coming out the end. It's got to be something else along the way. So we replaced the scope that it got fitted on the rifle with one of my own, and we shot it down the yard with that on, and still the group was all over the place. So this tells us that it's not the scope, it's not the silencer, it's not the pellets. So we've eliminated it down to the fact that it could be a burr on the inside of the barrel from where we've enlarged the transfer port, or it could be something to do with the fact that the gun is now regulated, and now it's regulated, it's not happy with the pellets, which were fantastic to start with. And so had the barrel off quickly, checked that perfectly okay, and at the same time pushed a couple of pellets through the barrel to look at the rifling marks, at which point we found that there was very little rifling marks on the pellet whatsoever. They were quite a loose fit within the rifle itself. And so I suggested to Ian that all we're going to do is exchange the pellets we were using, which were, I think they were the Air Arms Field 450 size pellets. So that's what he had been using and what he'd been getting a good group with. Now we exchanged those. I think we started off with some Bisley Magnums and then some simple cheap Ely Wasps, both of which gave very good groups. And after having a bit of a ferret around, I managed to find a tin of Air Arms 452s. Now, once we'd installed the 452s into the air rifle, the group was even better than it was to start with. So this goes to show that the pellet that you start off with, which you thought was the best, may not necessarily be the best once the rifle has been regulated. Now the reason for this with Ian's particular rifle was, if I find another colour pen, Ian had told me that the sweet spot that he had found for the best accuracy with the 451 pellets was right up at this end of the graph. Now this end of the graph is the 200 bar the rifle's just been filled end, and he says the worst accuracy was down here at the 100 bar rifle's nearly empty end. And so with his 450s, the best accuracy is up here. Now what you've got to consider here is when the gun's unregulated and you fire it, obviously there's a massive drop in air pressure from the 200 bar to the 100 bar finishing. Now at the 200 bar you're going to get a very small, very hard, sharp slug of air that's say that big. But by the time you get down to the 100 bar, the slug of air you're going to need to get the 12 foot-pounds is going to be quite a bit bigger, because it's at a lot lower pressure. Now, if we imagine this line along the bottom of the graphs, the air rifle barrel, up here when you first fire the gun and it's 200 bar with a short, very sharp pulse, the pellet has probably accelerated very quickly and rapidly. So say it's accelerated 12 foot-pounds in that short distance there. But when it's down here at 100 bar, it may come out the end still at 12 foot-pounds, but it's took a longer length of the barrel to accelerate up to full power. Now up here you're getting a far sharper, swifter burst of air hitting the pellet. Now as you'll almost likely know, I don't know if this will focus, but these modern pellets are made of a very soft lead alloy, and as you'll know you can deform them and squash them extremely easily because the skirts are quite thin. Now when he was firing the gun and it was nearly full of air, he was getting best accuracy because the 451 pellets, the skirts were slightly enlarging and flaring out into the rifling, making a good seal and getting a good average rifling mark all the way round the back of the skirt. And as the pressure drops off, the skirt's slightly less enlarged because the burst of air isn't quite so violent, and so the accuracy wasn't so good at the 100 bar. Now we fitted the regulator, and I think we fitted Ian's regulator at 90 bar, so that's quite a bit less, and so his accuracy had gone to pot. And so by changing to a larger size pellet, the skirt was already slightly bigger, and the blast of air wasn't enlarging it anymore because it was only hitting it with 90 bar as opposed to a short sharp burst of about 180 to 200 bar, and so the accuracy tightened up. And so that's just a bit of an example showing that if you're fitting a regulator into your airgun, you shouldn't assume that once the regulator's fitted in, if the accuracy is no good, if it's anything to do with the regulator, because there is a good chance that you might find that now the regulator's fitted, another pellet which hasn't been quite so good in the past is actually a better proposition and give you better consistency and accuracy. Now, as I'd already said earlier on, if you find with your airgun you've got an accuracy problem, it's very simple just to eliminate anything that might be causing that problem. So number one, get rid of any silencer, muzzle flip adapter or anything else off the barrel. If it's magazine fed, then carefully make a little tool or something so you can feed the pellets in one at a time to check that the probe and the magazine aren't damaging the pellet. Obviously double check the barrel transfer port that you've not left any burrs in there. But in general, if you're firing it over the chrono and every single shot is very, very, very consistent, then it's something to do with the pellet fit in the barrel. It's not to do with anything the regulator's doing. If every shot's consistent and the pellet's coming out with a good average speed, then there's something else along the chain. So if you fit a regulator, be aware that you might come up with groups that aren't so good, but that's mainly due to the pellet fit in the barrel, and you need to go away and experiment with what pellet works best now. If you haven't watched it already, there is another video which I've already uploaded some months ago to do with airgun pellets and regulated air rifles, and it's just an example where I fired a range of different fits and weights of pellets through a regulated S200.22, and if you watch the video you'll see that the weight and fit of the pellet vastly affects the shot count and the power that the gun gives out, and so you'll see that a particular weight and fit of pellet is the most efficient for power to shot count, and so that's something else that you can take into account when you're testing pellets through your regulated air rifle.